The first thing you want to do with your machine upon receiving it is visually inspect the crate. Make sure there are no signs of major physical damage. Make sure it doesn't look like it was dropped. Then we want to take a look at the tilt watch indicator. Make sure the machine wasn't jarred during the shipping process. It's a lot easier to unpack this if you have a screw gun or some kind of an electric screwdriver. We're going to start by removing the screws from the crate. We'll take the lid off first. After removing the lid, we're simply going to remove the screws so that we can take the front panel off. And there are a few screws down at the bottom that we need to remove. Now that we've removed all the screws, we want to make sure that we get the packing list so that we compare the contents of the crate to our order. And now we'll remove the front panel of the crate. To remove the machine from the crate, first we're going to start by taking the boxes out. And before we actually remove the machine from the crate, we're going to assemble the stand so that the machine is ready to go right on the stand. If you have to move the machine upstairs or to a basement or something like that, it's actually better to keep the machine off the stand and put the machine on the stand when it gets to its final resting place. To assemble a stand, you're going to want a 10mm Allen wrench, a 5mm Allen wrench, a 13mm box wrench, and a 10mm box wrench. All of these tools are in your toolbox that come with the machine. You also want to have some kind of a knife to cut the box open. So we're going to start by opening the box. And we'll take the parts out and unpack them first. Instructions. The leveling bolts. now the stand itself. One side of the stand. That part there was the shelf. These are the braces that go front to back. The box in here contains all of our hardware to assemble this. These are the rubber pads that go underneath the leveling bolts once the machine is in its resting place. That helps deaden the vibration. These pads go between the legs of the machine and the top of the stand, and then the various bolts for assembling. Okay, I'm going to take them out of the packages and lay them out just right on top of the package. Have the two front rails. And last is the other side of the stand. Now that we've got all the parts unboxed, we're ready to assemble. To assemble a stand, we're going to start by taking one of the sides, laying it down on a flat surface, and then taking the leveling bolts and putting it into the stand. Now, if for any reason this is tight and you can't get this in by hand, if you just grab a box wrench or an adjustable wrench, if you have a really big box wrench or a large adjustable wrench, just put it around this nut down here and turn it in that way. Sometimes you have to chase these threads a little bit. And I'm going to do this for this. and then the back side. And then I'm going to continue on and do it for the other side of the stand as well. Okay, after threading the last bolt into the second side, we're going to just stand these up either on the ground or on some kind of a workbench like we're using here. And this one's got a little wobble, so I'll just prop this side up a little bit. Okay. Now, we're going to put the bottom braces in. So, just adjust the distance to hold these in place. And we are going to take our 13mm wrench and our nuts, and we will put these in. You want to kind of leave these nuts a little loose at first so that we can get all the sides put together. That'll make it a little bit easier instead of trying to tighten them right away. And now we'll do the other side. After we get them all in, we'll just go back now and tighten them all down. Okay. Now we're on the last two bolts. They're all nice and tight. And now we're going to put on the front and back rails. To put the front and back rails on, we're going to use the Allen head screws. And it's actually better if we assemble them first. So we're going to take the Allen head screw. We're going to take the lock washer and put it on first. Then we'll take the flat washer and put it on next. And we're going to assemble all of our screws so we're ready to put the front and back panels on. So we're going to take the front panel, and we're going to set it right on the front here, and we'll put one of the top screws in. And then we'll take the other top screw and we will put it in. And we'll just continue on putting in the bottom two screws. Okay, now that we've got all of these in hand tight in the front, we're going to repeat the process and do the same thing in the back. Okay, now we're putting the last one in, and just a little taut, not tight. We want this to flex a little bit at this point so that we can put the table on. So now we'll grab the table, and there is a front and back to the table. The label goes to the front, which is where the SWF bar is. The indentations that receive the operations box or op box go to the back. Now, we take this, put this up here, and because that frame can flex a little bit, that's going to allow this to tilt just enough to drop in here. And now we can put our screws into the table. And those are the Phillips head screws with the nuts on the back. And I'll start by putting all 4 in, 1 in each corner. Okay. And now, using our 10mm wrench, and we can either use a screwdriver, or I had the screw gun from earlier, so I'm just going to use that to hold the screws and tighten these down, and we're going to continue to do that for all 4. Now, once we have the table tightened down, now we're going to take our 5mm Allen wrench, and we are going to tighten all of these Allen screws down. And you want to make sure these are good and tight. And we're going to continue to do this for all 8. 4 on the front and 4 on the back. Now we'll tighten up the last one. After you tighten those, you don't want those leveling bolts to be extended down past the wheels at this point. So we're going to remove these little rubber caps that cover up these holes. And we're going to screw the legs up. So screw that bolt down and then screw the legs back up. I'm lifting up to take all the weight off of this. It makes it a little bit easier so that it doesn't bind at all. And I'm going to continue to do that for all 4 legs. So now we'll screw up the last one. And these actually don't have to be screwed necessarily all the way up. As long as they're high enough to clear so that the stand is back on the wheels, that's actually high enough. At this point in time, it's best to get somebody to give you a hand with this. So we'll take the stand. Get it down on the ground. Okay, now that the stand is on the ground, we want to assemble the screws that hold the machine to the stand. And I'm going to just set these on the stand, kind of in the general location of where they go. They're going to come up through these holes right here in the stand. And then I want to grab those little feet that go underneath the frame of the machine and line those up with the holes and just set those on the stand. To finish uncrating the embroidery machine, we're going to start by removing the plastic covering and the second piece of plastic. And again, with our screw gun, we want to take the screws that hold this wooden plate down. We remove those, then we remove the wooden block. And the same thing on the other side. Now that we've removed the 2 wooden blocks that help hold the machine in, we're ready to lift the machine out of the crate. It's best to do this with another person because the machine does weigh 150 pounds and it is a little awkward lifting this. Now, although we're working inside the crate to lift it out, in many cases, it's better to completely break down the sides of the crate so that you can just access the entire machine. Of course, always lifting with our legs. And we're going to set this down on the table or the floor. And at this point, we want to have either a 19mm box wrench or an adjustable wrench, because we need to remove the feet that are on the machine right now. Now, if you ever wanted to put this machine on a table and operate it like this, you would put these feet back in here just like this. But if you want to operate it on the stand, these feet need to come out. So we're simply going to remove these feet. Now, if you have a second person, it's a lot easier if the second person holds the machine up as you do this, taking all the weight off of these. So now we're going to unscrew the last leg. Again, make sure you retain these legs, because if you ever wanted to put this on a table, these are the legs that you're going to put back in it. Now we're ready to put the machine on the stand. So the first thing we need to do is grab our 10mm Allen wrench, and these bolts go up through the stand. And again, if you have somebody to give you a hand, if they just raise this up a little bit, you can make sure the screw is lined up, and then it's got to come back a little bit. Back a touch, back a touch. Okay, and down. Okay, and get one lined up first, and let's see if we got that one. Okay, that one did line up. Now we don't want to tighten those too much, because then it makes it too difficult to get the rest of them lined up. So now we'll come to the front one, and we'll get this front one lined up. So again, if we could just lift up on the front a little bit. And we have to go over a little bit and come down. And usually if you can get opposing corners lined up, the other ones should be pretty close. So that one started. Now we'll try one of the other ones. In this case, I'm going to stay on the same side. I'm going to go to the back one. And it's a little bit off. So again, have your partner lift the machine up. Each time you're going to have less and less play. And that has to go over a little bit. That looks pretty close. Okay, that one's started up front, and we know that this rubber is not lined up, so we'll start by getting that lined up a little bit first. And if it could come just right there, try and set it down. And now we're just going to go around and tighten them all up. So looking at the packing list now, inside that crate should be the embroidery machine. Now the embroidery machine would also include the stand and the 2 accessory boxes, as well as the operation box. So let's take a look at those. We have this box here, labeled cap frame. And inside this cap frame box, you will find the cap gauge, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. A spare end for the cap gauge wrapped in newspaper, as well as an extra cap frame. In the large rectangular box, you will find the toolbox, which contains most of the tools and things that we need to maintain the embroidery machine. Two aluminum rods. These are for your metallic thread. We'll go over those later. Some oil for your machine. Grease for the machine. You'll have a training CD. You'll have the owner's manual for the embroidery machine on disc. You'll also have a USB key. Now it is very important that you not do anything with this USB key except for to retain it. This USB key contains the operating software for your machine. You do not have to install it. It's already pre-installed. This is just a backup copy. There's also a parts book in here. You're also going to have all of your frames. You're going to have a 9 centimeter, a 12 centimeter, a 15 centimeter, and an 18 centimeter round tube, and you will have 2 of each. You will also have a table. The table is used on the machine when we're trying to sew very heavy items, heavy blankets, heavy jackets, things of that nature. You will also have, with a compact machine, a large hoop. Now the size varies based on which machine you ordered, as well as what we call a double height hoop. If you look from the side, it's twice as thick as the other. And this is for sewing your heavy items. Again, that hoop depends on which machine you ordered. And if you have a compact machine, you're going to have this metal bar. Inside this package, you're going to have little thumb screws as well as little Allen head screws. The Allen head screws are exactly the same as the one that come on the machine, so you can just retain those as spares. These little thumb screws, though, actually go on this frame in these corners, and they're used to hold the big frame onto the machine. 2 of them are for this bar. The other 2 go on the bottom of the table. Let me show you where that is. In these holes right in the front. The other box we're going to have is going to be this one. Now this one's a little heavy. This actually has the operation box in it. The technicians affectionately refer to this as the op box. And this is really the electronics for your entire machine. So we're going to grab a hold of our power cord and set it off to the side for a moment. We'll take the box. And we're just going to take this and set this down on the stand, or if you're not putting the machine in a stand, you're simply going to put it next to the machine. Now we need to connect that to the machine. So to connect it, we're going to take our power cord and we're going to plug it in to the back of the machine right here. And we're going to take the 2 cables that are on the machine, we're going to unwrap them. And now I'm going to acquire a screwdriver from the toolbox, because that's the only tool required. And I'm going to start by removing the grounding screw. And this is our grounding wire. So I'm just utilizing that screw that I just took out. I'm going to secure the grounding wire. And if you look at these 2 ends, they're entirely different. You actually can't hook this up incorrectly, but it is very, very important that you hook this up and you push these connections very tight. So I'm going to start with the bottom one. I'm going to put it in here. And I'm going to make sure I wiggle it and push it in as tight as it'll go, and then secure it with these thumb screws. Then I'm going to take the top one, and again, making sure I push it in and wiggle it nice and tight. I also want to come here and make sure that this 100, which is the red area, is lined up with this line right here. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up front here to the control panel. I'm going to gently cut the tape away. I also like to come to the control panel in the front and just push this in and make sure this connection is nice and tight.